Just a disclaimer before this video starts. I am not a professional. I have never taken classes. I am completely and utterly self-taught. So do not take anything I say like as a law. This is just what I think, how I do it. So don't go crazy. Also, this is an unscripted video. I've never even done this before. I did this all in one take, one try. So it may be a little awkward. I tried my best to make a lot of sense and to edit it down to a reasonable length. And so I hope you guys like it and learn something, maybe. So yeah, okay, enjoy the video. Hello everyone, I am Mel, and a while ago I posted a poll on DeviantArt asking a bunch of my watchers if they'd be interested in a tutorial, in tutorials just in general, and what they would like to see if I did do tutorials. And the top vote was how I did my shading and highlighting. So I use two main colors for my shading and highlighting. I'm sorry for the cooing in the background. I can't really do anything about that. That is my bird. So I use this color for my shading and this color for my highlighting usually. Just a tip for, just in case you don't know, I do not think it is good at all to use black as shading. That's one of my big no-nos. Just never use black as shading. It makes things look muddy. Unless the character is all gray, that would be the only circumstance I could think of that it would be acceptable to use black. And even then, I think colored shading looks a lot better. So, there you go. I use the marker tool for my shading and highlighting. It's really not that hard to just find where you need to put the shading. You gotta think of where the light source is coming from. I usually put my light source up in the corner, in the left-hand corner. I'm not sure. You can draw. That's a horrible sun, but you know, that's just a reminder to remember where your light source is coming from, and then put the shading on the opposite side of where it's coming from. And I don't see a lot of people doing this, but eyes look a lot better if you shade them. Eyes do need shading, and it is good if you shade your eyes. I think it looks a lot better. And don't be afraid to go strong with the shadows of your shading. It's completely fine to use strong shadows, and in some cases it's very necessary to use them. I'm sorry if this video isn't very interesting or doesn't teach you much. I've never really done something like this before, so. And I'm not like an expert on shading, but this is just how I do it. I suggest studying like actual objects for shading practice to learn how. That's what I did, and I think I'm pretty decent at shading. Or just look up an actual like tutorial on where to put shading. If that's what you're looking for, that's not really what this video is. Okay, so now that we're done with that, I usually set it to, if you multiply, keeps the color, keeps the tint a lot better than shade. But if you'd like a more intense shading, then shade is the way to go. But I think I want to go with some soft shading for this one, so I'm just going to do multiply. And then I'm going to grab my blur tool that comes with side, and I don't really do anything specific. I just run over it a little bit until I like how it looks. It changes a lot depending on how I'm feeling and what looks good for this specific piece. But I usually keep the lines pretty sharp. I don't want it to look like I used an airbrush tool for the shading. That's another thing that I don't really like, using the airbrush. It doesn't look very good in my mind. So then I soften up a bit, and I usually lower the opacity quite a bit, about to 50, around 40 to 50. And then I will do my highlighting. I'll take my pink color here and just start putting it in all the strong areas first, where it's going to be most intense, putting a little highlight in the eyes. And now since this tag is plastic, it's going to have a pretty intense shine on it. And since the nose is wet, it'll have quite a bit of shine, and so will this strawberry. You really just put highlighting on the edges of things just for start, and then on the edges of the direction that your light source is coming from. And then start putting it in places that would poke out on a normal face, like the muzzle or the leg here and the tail. And then I set it to lumosity. Now that's a little intense, of course, so we're going to take our blur tool again and soften it up. I usually just kind of scribble all over everything just to give it a nice coat. And then lower it just a bit to around 40 to 50 again. But it does not stop there. I take my shading color again and fill in the entire area, and then set it to lumosity in shade, so it'll look like that. And then I'll take my marker tool, make sure it's at 100% density, select this little button that'll make it to where you are erasing the color, and then I usually like to lower it just a bit. If you do this and you get some nice gradients here and you lower the opacity, those are going to go away. So I like to lower it before I start to remove it from the eyes, except the very edge of the corner from where the light source is coming from. This is just to give it a lot more depth and stuff. So remove the color everywhere where you put your highlighting previously. And then I'd like to increase it in size and remove it in places that didn't have anything, like no shading, no highlighting at all. This will, again, just make it look a lot better, I guess, in general. Don't remove it everywhere, of course, because then there's not really much of a point of adding it in the first place. Of course, I like to do some pretty intense blurring after I'm done with that. I usually just run my brush all the way around it, try to get everywhere, then lower the opacity just a bit, and there we go. Now, I do not suggest using black line art. Black line art, it really helps if you color your line art. I always do my line art in black at first, so it pops out. But then I take my darkest color and put it down here in this corner, usually by the gray a bit, but keep it still have a lot of color in it. And then I press this little check mark on my line art layer for preserve opacity. That'll to make it to where you can't draw outside of what's already there. Then I like to color the entire thing that color. But it also adds a lot of depth to lighten the color a bit, lower the density on your color, and start putting this lighter pinky gray color where your highlighting is. And go ahead and go as light as you want with that. And just spread it around everywhere you want it. And then take a darker color and put it in the places that have shadows, intense shadows. This just makes it look a lot livelier and real, other than just having big, solid, black, bold lines. That could, if that's your style, go ahead, go for it, but this is how I like to do it. And then I like to take usually the color of the eyes or some kind of bluey purple color and lower the opacity a lot and just do a few lines through. I don't really know why I do this, but I like how it looks, just to have a bit of a pop of color to separate it from all the pink or all the color that you would have normally on your drawing. I also take the eye color and darken it quite a bit and color in the outlines of the eyes to make them pop. Of course, you can take a bit, do the same thing and take a lighter color and put that to lighten it up. Next is the effects for the eyes. I like to do, depending on what color the eyes are, I just like to move it to the next color. Like if they were red, I'd move it to pink. If they were pink, I'd move it to blue. If they're blue, I move it to green, like I'm doing. Take my marker and just little boop, boop, just like that. Set it to lumosity, lower the opacity just a bit. That gives this nice little shine. Maybe I'll do a little bit more turquoise color. Here we go. And then I'll do another layer, get my highlight color, make it a bit lighter, and color in some more highlights in the eyes. Just like that. And set it to lumosity. Lower the opacity just a bit to around 40 to 50. And there you go. And then, since it can get a little muddy here around these areas that there's a lot of highlighting or shading going on, then I like to make a new layer, get around a medium toned color, like around here, usually lighter since we're going to be using the lumosity again. And I like to add these little lines on the edges of the sections that are highlighted. Around the edge of the eyes, right here, on the nose a bit, highlight the strawberry. Just wherever you want it to make it pop a bit. Just like that. And then to add sparkles. I add lots and lots of sparkles to my drawings. Usually I add more where the highlighting is, of course. And then you can add a few, just go crazy. There's not really any rules to where to put the sparkle. Or if you even have to put the sparkle. No sparkle needed. Sparkles are not a mandatory step. Set it to lumosity, and there you go. That is how I do my shading and highlighting. Add my signature, and there we go. Yeah, that's it. Wow, okay, that was weird. I hope you learned something, maybe. If you want to see more of these tutorials, air quotes, tutorials, then let me know and what you would want it to be on, and I'll try to make it happen as soon as I can. Thank you for watching. Peace.